Male coworker gives me Ike vibes. Am I unfairly judging? Yup. There is lots and lots of talk out there about how women compete with their daughters, which may well be true, but we also need to be talking about how men view their kids as competition for their wives' time and attention, and view their daughters as mini wives. And then you have my dad, who was intellectually threatened by me and used that as fuel to psychologically push me down and belittle me for my inferior gender, even though he saw me as being the most like him and the most competent out of my siblings. Really messed with my mind and my sibling relationships. Asshole. I don't blame you. It's definitely gross to hear about how much of a man-child you gotta be to get mad at your son for stealing attention from your wife. Funny you say that, BC. I literally saw a big man-child standing in front of me when he made the comment. I wanted to be like, seriously guy, your son can't be more than 10 years old. Go cry about it. A man-child struggling to feel big and important by surrounding himself with his daughters looking up to him as the king of the castle while they massage his feet and bring him cold beverages. Disgusting. How terrible for him when the girls went on to get married. Maybe he will even forbid them to marry because he would have to compete with his sil. Gross. Trust your instincts. That guy is gross. I like to think of myself as open-minded. You make us sound like being open-minded means we can't be critical/wary about other cultures. I personally think it's dangerous for women to not be wary about some of the more misogynistic cultures. It could be a culture thing depending on where he is from. Lots of cultures have extreme levels of catering/deference to men and shitty treatment of women. I'm sure there are plenty of men in more progressive cultures that end up that way too, though. Depends a bit on how they are raised. I just think some cultures have a much wider spread of the kind of behaviors that would churn out men like this. Your judgment is likely correct from what he said. In your shoes I wouldn't talk to him beyond any basic pleasantries. Yeah, because girl babies come out of the womb with a spatula in one hand and a mop in another. /C I'm actually sad for all of his 5 kids. A grown man is jealous his son gets his wife's attention. A grown man is jealous of his own child. I'm judging the bastard, and I don't know him. Where has he emigrated from? I'm curious. A North African country. I won't say which for anonymity, but he does not follow Muslim religion, and is some form of Christianity. Coptic Christian. They're really misogynistic. Yeah, my guess is Egyptian. I know shitty men can exist elsewhere in North Africa, but from what I know of Moroccan, Tunisian, Algerian etc. cultures, it's why I'm more progressive there, ESP among Muslim men, and I've met a lot of good ones, and in some instances they're less sexist than North American white men are. No, we have our instincts for a reason, and you're doing right by sharing in what hopefully you feel is a safe space, trying to get some feedback about it. I grew up around this sort of thing and met many men and women like him. Generally it comes from a mix of them being raised that way, their culture and oftentimes religious backgrounds. They see no issue in admitting to this either because it's what they know. I'll say this, if my husband said that about our daughters I'd rip him a new one, I would feel the same as you. That conversation would make me uncomfortable. I'd probably avoid said coworker outside of professional situations. Something similar happened to me with a coworker. Back in 2022, we had a company offsite, and I got to meet a lot of the devs I work with IRL. One of them sent me into Ike Vibe World. We were talking about kids, and I had just had my first daughter a year prior to that trip. It was my first trip away from my daughter, so it was hard. He launched into how he's so glad his wife never breastfed because he did not want her breasts to change, and that he was happy her body did not change too much after having 2 kids. He talked about it a lot and how he could never be with a fat woman. He mentioned that I looked good after having my kid, and I was like, OMG, stop looking at me. I suddenly was like, IGTG, and ended the conversation. Sometimes you gotta go with your gut. It's 100% a cultural thing. It's also okay to judge him for it. Have you seen the US's white Republicans recently? There are misogynists in all groups. Yes, of course. But misogyny, like sexual orientation, is a spectrum. White Republican American misogyny is misogyny light compared to, say, Islamic or Orthodox Jew misogyny. This sounds like you are judging some groups by their most extreme members, while judging other groups by their most moderate members. Major right vibes. I feel sorry for his kids. And his wife. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's entirely possible that she has been brainwashed to have a lot of internalized misogyny. Definitely a creep and a piece of husband/father. I don't give a damn what country he's from or what religious beliefs he has. Anyone who talks about girls and women like they are property/servants is someone I will not associate with or tolerate any crap from. In today's world, claiming ignorance or that's just my culture no longer flies. Few years ago, a male engine colleague laughed out loud about the concept of women getting to choose who they love and who they want to marry. He literally viewed women as objects who shouldn't be allowed any agency, and so far, his behavior towards the few female colleagues in the team reflected the zero respect he had for them. I told him how interesting. Went to the higher ups with a few colleagues, and he got fired a week later. This is very on brand for all traditional cultures, unpopular as it has become to publicly state. Countries that are not in Western Europe, the US, Canada, and Australia are almost uniformly awful for women's rights. Exactly. Common thing in India too. People act like only women can cook or clean in homes, like it is physically only be possible for them. No, I'd totally be weirded out as well. He's obviously raising his daughters differently than his son. I experienced this with my dad on a smaller scale, since I didn't live with him. But his sons are way less empathetic than my sister, and that's cause he raised them to be selfish and offensive. I mean, the dude has 5 kids. TBH. I get creepy vibes from just about everyone with a huge family. It's a lot to have that many pregnancies and births. It's a lot to support that many kids and give them love and attention. It's a lot of people to add to an overpopulated world. This is extremely judgmental and just weird. Am I crazy, or does this reek of extreme "women are subservient and born to serve men" mentality? And the competitive nature with his son, what the heck is that about? Not crazy. This dude is icky. It absolutely does. Which is also probably why the son is so attached to the mother. She likely doesn't make him do anything for himself. She's raising a mini version of her husband. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they were on the same page with this stuff. He spoke so matter-of-factly that I can't imagine him getting along with a wife with a different, much more modern outlook. Ike. It's right up there with the idea that daughters steal your beauty. Parents in competition with their offspring is a real Ike. Yeah, that's some pervasive sexism. It's literally everywhere, Western countries included, and in every country on the globe. The traditions might be different, but it's the same sickness everywhere. Yeah, the comment about his only son is totally Ike, and I'm not sure where he's from, but that's very prevalent in my culture, and it's gross to me too. Men like this shouldn't be parents. It's for all the wrong reasons. I would definitely stay away from him in the future, just because he seems like he may be the type that would say something inappropriate, and when you take issue with it, he may say you misunderstood what he said. I would just note the conversation and stay away from him. This entitlement means you'll need to have thick boundaries around him. Keep trusting your instincts. You can be open-minded and critical of cultural norms. In this case, I don't even know if his way of thinking is a cultural norm. He could just be a shitty individual. Being open-minded means you evaluate customs relative to their culture's context. However, it could be argued that some morals are universal. You probably felt uncomfortable because you believe that daughters and sons should be equally valued and that they should be valued as individuals, not for how their presence serves their father. Nothing wrong with that. Trust your intuition. I would be wary of him too. I don't really see how to interpret it differently. He sounds highly patriarchal. I hope he's not your boss. I'm not going to DV you for it. but I'm definitely going to give insight to a possible cultural aspect, since this was something I was exposed to growing up. There are still ethno/religious cultures that expect all the women and girls in the house to be subservient to the husband/dad and cater to their wants and whims. And it's also a training tool to teach the daughters what their responsibilities are when they are adults and get married. It's a form of parentification of the girls and reinforcing gender roles. The man's gripe about having to compete for affection with his son means he's not actively participating in parenting as much as he should. It's not healthy to be competitive like this with your own children. You're not wrong from feeling ike from him for this, because he's being sexist toward his own family. But looking into his cultural background and dynamics when you have time will be an eye-opener, and it will make it easier to navigate going forward, since there's nothing you can do to change his mind or behavior. Wow, that's gross. Definitely says that he doesn't like male competition, and that he thinks women/girls should be servant types. He's going to run that boy out of the house as soon as he can. I really don't dig what he said. However, I also don't dig that you straight away reach for an explanation that's connected to assumptions about his culture. Sexists and blokes who like creepy ideas about tradition and family come from all sorts of cultures, including the ones that might count as more normative to you/where you are. It's hardly like you never hear misogyny from folks born in the USA. Most likely culture. Just be happy you're not his wife and ignore. I think that you are allowed your opinions, and I would agree with you, but I don't think he's an inherently bad or necessarily even misogynistic, especially if his English is not good. Even in American culture, girls have often been more nurturing. In some cases it can be how they are raised, and in others it's just natural. My son is much more nurturing than my daughter. If I'm hurt, he will show sympathy and ask if he can get me a band-aid. He shares his food with me, and sometimes has even asked me if I need this or that. And he's only 5. His sister is almost 10 and shows none of that lol. Your coworker may just be appreciative of the attention, but did not verbally praise it in a way that made him sound not misogynistic. What if his son also was the same way? Then would he be happy? Or maybe his ethnic background. He recognizes that Americans equate his culture with having less value of girls, and he said all that to try and combat the stigma. Who knows? But my initial reaction would probably be similar to yours.